Arthur Miles lived a quiet life. At 36, he was a man of routines. Morning coffee at the same cafe, a 9-to-5 job in a nondescript office, and evenings spent alone in his small apartment. He liked it that way. Fame, with its invasive cameras and prying biographies, was a phenomenon he observed from a distance. Better than me, he often thought. It was during one of his habitual cafe visits that the stranger appeared. Dressed in a tailored coat that somehow didn't belong to the room, the man approached Arthur's table with an apologetic smile. "Mr. Miles?" Arthur blinked. "Do I know you?" "Not yet," the man said, setting a leather-bound notebook on the table. "My name is Victor Leon. I'd like to write your biography." Arthur laughed, glancing around to see if anyone was watching this bizarre interaction. They weren't. "My biography? You've got the wrong guy." Victor's smile didn't waver. "You'd be surprised how extraordinary your story is." "Extraordinary?" Arthur scoffed. "I'm an accountant. I go to work, I go home. There's no story here." Victor leaned in, his voice lowering. "That's where you're wrong. Your life, your choices, your presence has a ripple effect on the world. And I want to tell that story." Arthur should have refused outright, but something in Victor's tone, his certainty, intrigued him. Against his better judgment, he agreed to meet again. Over the following weeks, Victor shadowed Arthur's life. He asked probing questions about Arthur's childhood, his routines, even the people he passed on his daily commute. Arthur dismissed most of it as harmless curiosity, but Victor's observations were unsettlingly precise. "You always pause at the corner of 5th and Main," Victor noted one evening. "Why?" Arthur shrugged. "Habit, I guess." Victor smiled faintly. "It's not habit. It's decision. Subtle, unconscious. But it changes things." Arthur brushed it off, though he couldn't help but wonder what Victor meant. He began to notice things he hadn't before. Strangers seemed to watch him longer than usual. Conversations in his office stopped abruptly when he entered the room. And Victor, always poised, always observing, never missed a beat. One night, Arthur confronted him. "What is this really about? Why me?" Victor closed his notebook, his expression unreadable. "Because you are unique, Mr. Miles. You're the perfect subject." "For what?" Victor hesitated, then spoke carefully. "There are people who believe their lives don't matter, that they are invisible. But invisibility has power. You've shaped more lives than you realize, simply by being unnoticed." "That doesn't make sense," Arthur said, his unease growing. "It doesn't have to." Victor stood, gathering his things. "The book is nearly complete. Soon, you'll understand." The next day, Arthur noticed changes. His co-workers avoided his gaze. The barista at the cafe seemed startled to see him. Even his reflection in the mirror looked off, like it belonged to someone else. Victor was gone, but the manuscript arrived a week later. It was left on his doorstep, wrapped in brown paper. Arthur hesitated before opening it. Inside, the pages were filled with meticulous detail about his life. Things he hadn't shared. Things no one could know. The final chapter described Arthur in the present, sitting alone in his apartment, reading a book that wasn't written for him, but about him. The last line chilled him to his core. Some stories end when the subject vanishes. Others begin. Arthur looked up, and for the first time in his life, he felt truly seen. A faint knock echoed from his front door.